Larry, it's Ross Tucker. Good to have you on the Dan Patrick Show today. I'm filling in for Dan. I guess, can you just give us an update as to what we know right now? Because this stuff with Cardell Hayes' dad and the police department, it's kind of more than a coincidence, or at least it seems like it to me.
Right, and just up to speed right now, the police have arrested, and you mentioned the suspect, Cardell Hayes, who didn't flee the scene of the accident and the shooting. He stayed there, and the New Orleans Police Department saying in a press conference yesterday that Will Smith was shot several times in the back and the torso, and Hayes was arrested and charged with second-degree murder. When we don't know if it's totally connected yet, but there is a side story to this where Will Smith was at dinner about an hour before he was shot to death with a former NOPD commander, and this commander was part of a lawsuit involving the shooting death of Hayes' father 10 years ago, and so you have to be skeptical and think maybe this might be part of it. Do we know? We don't know, but all we do know is that Hayes has been charged with second-degree murder of Will Smith, and he's got $1 million bail. And this town is. When it comes to crimes and murder, I think New Orleans and their citizens have become desensitized, and I've talked to so many people that hope that this incident can kind of wake up this city to what's going on, because look, Will Smith is one of the classier guys you can find in the NFL and with the Saints organization, and he's gone, 34. His wife was also shot. She was shot in the leg, I believe, twice. Last I've heard, she is in stable condition. But look, Will Smith leaves behind a wife and 3 children, and really a community and an NFL in New Orleans and Saints community and an NFL community who's at a loss right now.
Larry, are there any theories or logic as to why Cardell Hayes stayed? I mean, obviously, I've never shot anybody, but I can't imagine that I would just stay there. I mean, there had to be some reasoning why he just stayed there. Is there any theories out there or speculation?
Well, his lawyer, after his court appearance yesterday, their case is that Will Smith was the aggressor in the incident, and like there's some differences of stories depending on which side, who was involved in creating the car wreck. And but yeah, I find that curious as well. And so right now, all we're doing, this case is still kind of in its infancy as far as being investigated. But yeah, I think that is something where we're going to have to find out more why he would stay around. He may believe he was in self-defense, but none of us were there. That's what we're going to find out as this case proceeds.
We're talking with Larry Holder. He's covered the Saints since 2006 for the New Orleans Times, Picayune, and NOLA.com. Larry, he went to 1 Pro Bowl. Would you call him a great player or just a good player?
I think he's a Saints great, for sure. And it's sad that our media corps had elected him into the Saints Hall of Fame in March, and the announcement wasn't going to come down until mid-May. So he is considered one of the all-time Saints greats within this community. But, yeah, he was kind of that stabilizer on defense. So 2004 first-round pick, and it's one of the first-round picks in Saints history that lived up to the expectations. And look, that Super Bowl year and for several other years, captain of the defense along with Jonathan Vilma, and really he was their main pass rusher for several years. And it's but yeah, 1 Pro Bowl. That double-digit sacks, and actually didn't go to the Pro Bowl. One year he had double-digit sacks, but really was one of those main forces in that 2009 Super Bowl run for the Saints, and just known also as this quiet guy and involved in the community. And as eerie as it is, he a few years ago he tweeted something about New Orleans, let's stop this violence. And unfortunately, he died because of violence in the city.
What kind of person, Larry? I know, at least I didn't know him personally, but based on Twitter, boy, everybody, all of his former teammates, it seems like, really speaking glowingly of him.
Yes, I would say someone who is not this rah-rah guy, but someone who can always kind of find a way to relate to anyone, really, talk to anyone. I talked to one of his former teammates yesterday, Scott Shanley, linebacker for the Saints for several years, basically almost the entire time Will Smith was at the Saints as well. And he said, look, they come from vastly different backgrounds, but Will Smith just had a knack of relating to him and relating to everyone else around him. Really known for being a family guy, and it's a guy who gave back. And like I said, he wasn't about, the showboating and all of that. And I think that's one of the reasons why he was so endeared by his teammates and by the fan base here. And at 34 years old, he was last on the Saints team in 2013, and I still think this area in New Orleans and the Saints community is in shock, and I think they'll be in shock for a long time, just wondering why this could happen to someone who didn't seem to deserve it.
Larry, why is New Orleans so desensitized to it? Why are things so bad down there right now?
Look, I do think that there's just a brazen attitude that's grown within this community, and it's been here for a long time. And I know people like to talk about, when can it stop? And there's always, there's the excuse of, the lack of a police force. The police force has been down. This has been going back since Hurricane Katrina, when the numbers went down. But but I think a part of it, you can point to the education system. Look, last night and yesterday, Tyrann Mathieu, who grew up in troubled areas in New Orleans, was very frank about the conditions of New Orleans and things he went through. And look, some of those things he fell into, and I think that's part of the problem as well. So it's a multi-layer thing here in New Orleans, and I don't know if it's going to change anytime soon. You hope that something can change because of this, but I do think people here in New Orleans probably aren't holding their breath, because we've probably said this many, many times with many, many incidents, but this is probably the most high-profile incident we've seen in the last several years.
Larry, really appreciate the time. Thanks so much.
Yeah, thanks, Ross. Appreciate you having me.
The Dan Patrick Show, weekday mornings on Audience.